This is a Dreamcast disc and is for use only on a Dreamcast unit. Playing this disc on a hi-fi or other audio equipment can cause serious damage to its speakers.
Dreamcast, up to 6 billion players.
Welcome back to the stage of history.
Why don't we play together?
Hey, it's time to make some crazy money. Are you ready? Here we go!
Please stop this disc now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of DreamPod 93, in fact, the 93rd episode, which is crazy. This is the podcast by the Dreamcast Junkyard. And joining myself, Andrew, today are the wonderful Mike and Lewis. How are you both?
Yeah, not bad, Andrew. Been a while since the last podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good too, Andrew. I know for sure me and Mike both received the Tex Assist today, the new indie game, and very, very lovely sort of packaging and everything on the special edition of that. I think, Mike, you got both, didn't you?
I did. Yeah. Good high quality indie release.
Really nice. Can't wait to play that. So very exciting.
That is very cool. Mike, you said it there. It's been a while since we've done one of these, right? It feels like forever. I can't even remember the last time that we did one of these. Too long.
Time has no meaning anymore.
It really doesn't. Yeah. It's a worry because we do need time, and yet it's slipping by very quickly with nothing happening. But now something is
depressing.
Happening. Yeah, let's move out of the depression because we're back for another Dream Pod. Thank you very much for coming back and joining us. And we do have a couple of guests today, so it's not just me, Mike, and Lewis. We have actual other people. It's become this huge thing at the moment in the Dreamcast community, which is translations of Japanese games. You know, the Western market had some amazing games, but the bulk of the games came out in Japan and we never saw them, and a lot of us can't read or speak Japanese, so you know it's a bunch of lost games to us in the West, really. However, there are a number of people now translating those games, which is amazing, and we have two of those people right here with us who have been doing amazing work. So joining us today are Derek and Burntends. How are you?
Hello. Happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yes, I'm glad to be here as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming on. It's we've been speaking to you in the Dreamcast Junkyard Discord for a while. Of course, you've got your own Discord channel too, but you've kind of been very talkative in our Discord, which is great because we've got to find out all these amazing translations that you've done, which is fantastic. So thank you very much for letting us know about them.
Of course. As soon as I saw that the Dreamcast Junkyard, a publication and a podcast that I've been a big fan of for since its inception. Once I saw you guys had a Discord, naturally I had to be there. So I would say that there have been a number of translations done specifically for the Dreamcast over the last, at least 6 years, at least. I remember an episode you guys did a few months ago where I think Tom was on it, mentioning something about, I wish there were more translations for the Dreamcast. They're like, there's hardly any at all. And me over here, I'm saying, that's not true. But I sent him a message on the Dreamcast Talk forums, and I said, here's my personal repository of all patched Dreamcast games from Japanese to English. And I think maybe it started coming more into all of your purview recently, but it has been going on for a while. But I will say it's definitely gaining in popularity. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were just looking in the wrong direction. We were too busy looking at all the new pixel art games coming out and weren't busy looking at what was going on with translations. But yeah, absolutely amazing. And it's great that there's so many more coming. But we'll get more into this in a second because I feel like I'm jumping the gun here. I've not even asked my weird question that I would ask everybody at this point in the podcast. So I'm going to do that now. Are we all ready for a weird question to start us off?
Always.
Yeah.
I know you are, Mike. This goes without saying. All right, let me ask you then. And we've just spoken about Tom, so this is kind of a good coincidence here. But my question does revolve around him in a way. The question is, if Tom Charnock invented a digitization device that allowed you to forever live in one Dreamcast game's world, what game would you pick? And also, what have you done to piss off Tom that makes him digitize you? It's kind of a double question there. Mike, I'm going to come to you first. What game would you want to forever live in, and what do you think you'd have done to piss off Tom to make him put you in there?
Interesting.
Putting you on the spot here.
Well, I think it's going to have to be Shenmue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because,
one or two?
One.
Okay.
One. More of a sort of a homely, sort of relaxed feel.
Yeah.
What I pissed him off for, probably, I don't know, didn't agree with something on our rally pod. I don't know. To be fair, actually, he probably would put me into Re-Rally 2 because he knows that I'd want to go into the Finnish rally stages in Re-Rally 2 and spend some time in some Scandinavian or some Nordic forests.
That doesn't sound like that you'd have pissed him off at all. He's being nice to you there. But
yeah, it's always a quiet one. So Tom's, never piss off Tom. Never piss off Tom.
He's just to point out, Tom is lovely, and I am joking. But
he does have a shotgun, though. He does have a shotgun. Yeah,
that is true. All right, I'm gonna kind of walk back everything I've said about Tom so far. Lewis, what about you?
Well, I kind of feel like it has to be Spirit of Speed. See, I thought Mike was going to go for Spirit of Speed, but
right.
I just feel like Tom would throw me into Spirit of Speed and just see as I sort of live life through 1 frame per second, and everything's just really slow and boring, and I don't know. And I'd probably end up in there for, I don't know, disagreeing on what the best song or album by My Chemical Romance is or something like that. So yeah,
none of them being the answer.
Careful, Mike. Tom's actually going to be coming for you now.
Yeah, you're going in Shenmue world, mate.
If you could choose though, Lewis, I mean, obviously I don't think you'd choose to go in Spirit of Speed. What Dreamcast game would you choose to go in if you could?
If I had to pick like the positive answer and not the Spirit of Speed answer,
mm-hmm.
I feel like Shenmue 2, but that last bit where he's like Ryo and Shenhua like walking through that forest, it just seems like it'd be really beautiful to trek through there in real life.
Yeah.
So that'd be my positive answer.
I mean, you'd be stuck there forever. So would you just be repeating the walk over and over again, or?
Well, there's the odd bit where you have to like jump under a fallen tree and stuff like that, so mix it up slightly.
True. Yeah. Derek, I'll come to you next. To be honest, I don't think you've done anything to piss Tom off, so we can ignore that if you'd like. But what Dreamcast game would you like to go into if you were forced to be digitized into a game world?
Well, I was prepared to answer the question fully, so I'm just going to tell you. I think what I would have done to piss him off was I would have accused him of being a secret PS2 fanboy sent as a double agent to, sabotage the Dreamcast world.
Wow.
No, just kidding, Tom. We love you. And also remember, he might have a shotgun, but this is the United States. I think we all know home firearms here are out of control. So. The Dreamcast game I think I would most want to be, and I'd have to agree with Mike, the ambiance, overall atmosphere of Shenmue 1 is part of something very near and dear to my heart, so I would choose to live there.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on, so it's not like you'd be bored. You could go to the arcade if you fancied it. So
get a bus.
Yeah, go find some sailors.
Yeah,
feed a cat.
Yeah, so much to do. Burntends, what about you? What game would you go into? And if you have a reason that Tom's pissed you off, feel free to say it.
Oh man, so I'm afraid I'm not too well versed on the Dreamcast library, so I might have to go with the basic answer and go with the Sakura Wars world, just so I can listen to all those cool musicals that they do all the time.
True.
As for pissing off Tom, I'm afraid I don't know him, so I'd probably do something stupid like ripping the tag off his mattress or something.
That's pretty good.
Oh dear. All good answers though. I think I'd probably choose Skies of Arcadia. I quite like that world. There's lots of different places to go, and the little home island that you can upgrade. It's kind of kind of nice and cutesy. Yeah, kind of nice. Everybody's very camp. I can't think what I would do to piss off Tom. I'm just too nice. I don't think I would do anything to piss Tom off. Telling him that he's bad at clay pigeon shooting, I think he would not like me for that. But I don't think that's true either.
Having a little pop at Man United as well. It's always a good one to piss off.
Is he a fan of Man United?
He is a fan of Man United, yeah.
Oh dear.
I know. We don't mention it much because of that reaction.
Yeah.
He's from Manchester, to be fair.
He is,
which is unlike most Man United fans.
That's true. Let's move on then to the reason we're here and the reason we've got Derek and Burntends on the pod today, which is translations, Dreamcast game translations. And I think the first question really has to be, what got you into it in the first place? What made you want to translate games for the Dreamcast?
I guess I'll start. So this is Derek, in case there's any issue identifying whose voice is who. So I've been a lifelong Sega fan. I mean, from the Genesis, also known as the Mega Drive, and then the Saturn, and the Dreamcast. I had all of them basically around launch, and I've just, in fact, till this day, it's the only 3 consoles I play. So as far as I'm concerned, my brain is like permanently stuck in 1999. But specifically, English translations. As soon as I was exposed to the fact that, there was anybody out there doing this, I was totally fascinated. And from the time I was a kid, I started getting into computer programming. I mean, I remember I used to beg my parents to take me to the local library to buy, teach yourself C++ books, which, I mean, I would never admit that when I was in grade school, get my ass kicked. But, I had that technical mind. And I would say that when Police Knots for the Sega Saturn, which just so happens to be, I'm comfortable saying, my favorite game of all time, when that translation patch was done, and I tried it for the very first time, and I saw just the, I would say the care, the passion that was put into making that a fully localized game that you could literally slap plastic wrap on and put it on a shelf and sell it, in the West. I said, wow, this is something I think I would like to get into. Even with having a software development background, ROM hacking and reverse engineering, those, my background can lend itself there, but it's honestly an entirely different science, so to say, right? But Dreamcast was I would say, my target first, because out of all 3 of those systems that I mentioned that I love so much, if I had to choose a world where 2 of them didn't exist, right, I think the Dreamcast, as hard as it would be, that would be the one that would win. And so I first started looking just at, what's involved in making that a reality, and realized that with some time, I could definitely learn how to do it successfully.
Excellent. And Burntends, what about yourself? How did you come into this?
Yeah, so about a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years now, I got into game collecting, and I ended up with Saturn. And so funny enough, I saw this one commercial for Sakura Wars. So I got really obsessed with the series because I just really liked the music. So I looked around, found out about the English translation of the original game, found their server, and asked if I could help out with starting maybe the second game. Unfortunately, I'm still looking for that stuff. But a couple months later, Derek, I got a tip from Aria saying that Derek was looking for people to work on Sakura Wars Columns. This was my first ever project. I immediately jumped at the chance, saying, "Yeah, I'll do it. I don't know any Japanese, but I will do the best that I can."
Wow. So that's that. I was going to ask kind of how much you both speak the language, but in terms of translation, then what's the ins and outs of that? Then how does that work?
So I'll also add that I do not speak or read or write Japanese. I mean, obviously being a video game fan, and obviously being exposed to the Dreamcast and the Saturn and the Genesis Mega Drive's Japanese libraries from a young age, I could identify words like yes, no, quit, save, right? Those types of things. And I'll let Burntends comment on this more. But essentially, how guys like us or a team like ours would go about actually effectively translating Japanese into into English in such a natural and localized way. I mean, it's a combination of some of the sophisticated machine translation that exists today. So everybody's familiar with Google Translate, but there's also another fantastic service called DeepL or Deep Learning, which uses some a little bit more sophisticated artificial intelligence. And I think it kind of uses, seems to crowdsource like common expressions and common ways that language is formulated or put together in written documents and news articles, things like that, to really come and deliver you a very natural, phrasing in the target language. But also, part of our group, we had an Indonesian girl who actually has studied Japanese a lot, right? To the point where she can hear spoken Japanese and transcribe it. She can write it, read it. I mean, obviously not on the level of a full native speaker, but between her, the tools that exist today, other people in the community whom we can consult for, certain questions on more difficult aspects of the Japanese language, right? All those things combined really allowed us to, deliver this high quality translation, and would allow us to keep doing so in the future.
The one that is the most recent, of course, that we've been talking about most recently is the Hanagumi Taisen Columns 2 translation. It'd be great to hear from you both, Burntends and Derek, about that process and kind of what made you choose that one as well.
So I definitely want to hear Burntends talk about this, because him being on the translation, localization, and lore side, it's definitely kind of more interesting than perhaps all of my technical explanations. But just very brief history before I pass the microphone to him. Late January of this year, 2021, the year of our Lord, I started poking around at the game just to say, hey, is this feasible? Do I understand the file formats involved? Is this going to be something that I can do in my spare time? And being a big fan of the Sega Saturn patch and really kind of falling in love with that game, I figured this would be a cool kind of supplement to that world. Started poking around at the game, realized I could do it. And then just a few days later, kind of like Burntends mentioned, I was just, in some of the Discords that I frequent, kind of showing some of the work I was doing. And then Aria hooked me up with Burntends, and the rest is history. But that is the genesis there.
Interesting.
So the way it went is that Aria had been reaching out to the people who had done the first Sakura Wars, and unfortunately they were a little tied up with other projects. I had been just sitting around, not doing much, because they were already pretty much done by the time I got there, and said, "Hey, yeah, I'll do it. I want to see if I could handle translation, being a non-Japanese speaker, and also just a way of getting my foot into the scene." So basically, I started working, translating some of the more simple stuff, such as the Shonen Red mode, which is just a single line and basically victory quotes and ending quotes for each character. Over time, I had started looking around for other people. I eventually stumbled upon the most important resource, which was a couple of dedicated Sakura Wars fan servers. They had a lot more knowledge of the series than even I did. They would also translate their own stuff, such as the stage shows, which would go on for like 15 years. Eventually, we got this one girl, again, Natsume, who knew Japanese much better than I did. So then that's when we made our assembly process, which was she did it first, and then I would go in and rewrite the English. And then later on, we also got this one newspaper editor named Danthrax, who helped out halfway through our project, helping out with spelling, making sure that we had the right grammar, and helping us keep on top of all the lore and the special terms. Because in the original Sakura Wars, the team actually gave us the styling sheet, which was used to basically, it's an Excel sheet that has a lot of different terms specific to like all the characters. For example, how to spell all their names, all the special pet names that all the girls have for the player character, and of course how to spell different terms such as the robots, which is Kobu. Because official sources, they do not agree on a lot of the spellings for a lot of the characters or all the terms. So we're trying to keep it consistent.
Excellent. The professionalism there sounds like having somebody who translates, having somebody who makes sure that it all kind of flows well, and then making sure that in terms of it being written down, having the actual spelling and grammar correct. That that's like a professional process, which is an amazing thing to hear happening for these kind of games, because it just means that when people actually play them in English, they're getting, you know, a lot of translations that you see sometimes, people are just really, they really want to translate it into English. They'll do it, and maybe they don't speak English the best, or maybe they haven't got the best grasp of spelling and grammar, so what you end up with is something that perhaps is, it's great, but it will take you out of the situation sometimes, because there'll be a spelling error, or there'll be a weird translation. And to be honest, official translations are very much this happens to a lot. I mean, there are some old Final Fantasy translations, right, for the official English ones, where the spelling and grammar was questionable. So the fact that you've got a team in to ensure that, in English these read well is really commendable. That's pretty awesome to me.
You mean you don't like Spoony Bard?
You got some laughs out of those things, I guess, right? But it does take you out of the game that you're playing when you see those things, doesn't it?
I just want to jump in here, because I did listen to the Found in Translation pod that you guys appeared on, which was excellent, by the way. I do recommend everyone goes and seeks that out, for a more in-depth look at, sort of the other things that went on during this translation. But it's interesting that you have like this that sounds like a really valuable resource, like a style sheet, because on that pod I remember you discussing basically the fact that there's all these different adaptations of Sakura Wars, there's animes, there's mangas, there's all these different things, and it just seems like none of these things can get the sort of specific terms consistent. Like they'll spell things differently, and so it sounds like that was like a super resource just to have from the offset. I imagine that helped quite a lot.
Yeah, it did. Because of the fact that we're so closely tied to the original Sakura Wars team, as Danthrax mentioned in that podcast, is that this is acting like a supplement to the people that already play the original game, so we want to keep it in line and hopefully set a precedent for future projects in which we can use the same terminology. I know Sega is starting to make their own continuity almost, and they're getting there. Such as them calling it a review rather than we calling it an acting troupe. But in the end, it's just a matter. It's all about trying to keep everything as close as possible to the other projects in this, I guess you could say, timeline.
Makes sense, absolutely. But it's another thing. I mean, obviously the professionalism is one thing to note, but also the teamwork as well. Kind of working as a team. It sounds great. Do you guys get along really well, or is it? Do you not speak much apart from just doing the translation side of things?
Well, I could say that. I mean, we have obviously our Discord servers where we all are, but as much as kind of like coworkers, right? You eventually start to kind of develop a certain bond. And I could certainly say that if I were to be anywhere geographically close to anybody from our team, I would be more than happy to go, catch a movie, go get dinner, hang out. And I think that because a lot of us are kind of overlapping in some of the Sega Saturn discords, the ROM hacking and translation discords, Dreamcast, it's inevitable that we're going to continue some form of communication until, I guess, we grow up and put our computers and video game consoles away. I have no plans of that, but
when's that going to happen? Like never?
I don't know. I think my parents were sure it was going to happen like 20 years ago, but here I am.
So you're all quite. I mean, you mentioned Natsume is from Indonesia. You guys are, I'm assuming, both in America. Are you opposite ends, and are you just all spread out across the world at this point then?
Yeah, I'm in New York, and Burntends is down in Florida near.
I'm in Orlando.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember where Danthrax is located out of. I think somewhere in the Midwest, based on his accent potentially. But then who knows? I might get in trouble for making that kind of assumption. So I'm not sure.
For some reason, Connecticut stands out in my mind, but I could be pulling this out of thin air.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But it's the kind of thing that, I mean, when the Dreamcast began, the kind of the early days of the internet as we know it, these kind of projects just wouldn't happen, right? Like, at the time of the Saturn, at the time of the Mega Drive, you couldn't get this kind of project off the ground. And of course, I'm sure people, it was, you had forums and chat rooms as the Dreamcast came into prevalence. But it's just not something you could even consider, maybe 20 years ago. So it's incredible that now people from all over the world can come together with a shared love of something like translating games into English that just have never been accessible before, and do that. What's the likelihood that a group of friends in the same town are going to want to do that? So it's really cool that you guys found each other and have been able to do what you've done so far. It's awesome. So it's a combination between kind of stuff that already exists in terms of translations that already exist, kind of machine learning, AI, tech, and then kind of getting people who have an idea of the language and can help translate, and then kind of putting it into more natural English sounding phrasing, I suppose. It's a combination of lots of different things to make all that happen. And do you do that for every game you translate, or do different games require different strategies in order to translate them properly?
Yeah, so for me, the only two other games I ever did, which were Neon Genesis Evangelion Typing Project E, which typing game for the Dreamcast, which you all so graciously covered on your blog, for which I thank you very much. That was something where I took upon myself to kind of do all of the work solo, where I had obviously an understanding of, let's say, the lore or the series, the characters, the settings, all of that. And I was able, with, obviously consulting a few people here and there just to make sure I didn't commit some kind of mortal sin against the language of, Japanese. I was able to do that largely by myself, to the point where obviously I'm more than happy to credit everybody in my release notes who helped, but where I was pretty much the only person responsible for that. And then Taxi 2, that being another obscure game, but definitely a cool project and definitely historically significant. That, of course, was French. So I got French speakers to transcribe the spoken dialogue in the FMVs, right, and allowed us to translate from there. So in the future, as I tackle additional games, I think that the process that we refined for Sakura Wars Columns 2, I think that would probably be the winning formula moving forward.
Interesting. And you mentioned Taxi 2 there. Lewis, we had James, in fact, did a stream of the Taxi 2 translation. Is that right, on YouTube?
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube. It's a very interesting game, and it's one that, as Mike will probably attest to, does not need anyone to go out and buy it for. I mean, how much is it worth nowadays, Mike, that game?
I think so, around £70, £80 if you're lucky at the current time.
Okay, that's not as bad as I thought it was, but it
fluctuates a lot. Yeah, Taxi's always been a weird one. In fact, you could buy it from France for like £15 a few years ago, and people in the UK were selling it for 150. So it's one of those games where one day it's 75, next day it's 160.
I mean, I think the sort of, it's a shame really, because I believe the film that it's based on is actually quite decent. It's quite sort of charming in its way. And they sort of churned out this really low quality game, but thanks to Derek, it is a game that we can, experience, if not just to yell at it and say it's a bit rubbish, but it's really nice to see the story that's unfolding, because there is a story that's basically very close to the movie. But yeah, it's just nice to be able to unlock, I guess, a bit of Dreamcast history that we kind of didn't really have access to, not being able to speak French. One to bring up again, which Derek has already mentioned, but the Evangelion typing tutor is quite a big deal, really, I suppose, in regards to translation. I mean, I know that it was relatively playable. Derek, you have to remind me, because it's been a while. Is it the last two levels where it goes full on Japanese characters and it's basically impossible to play if you don't know them?
So it's actually the last three, the third of which is locked by default until your total accrued score reaches a certain point. Yeah, that is true. So about the first half of the game is playable without being able to, write Japanese on a keyboard. But I will say that even of those 3 stages, which are broken down into like 3 or 4 sub stages, let's say each, even with that, at least a third of all of that collectively is still not really localized, because it actually has you type out the like the romanized version of Japanese words. So you can technically type it, but it doesn't mean anything to you as an English speaker, right? You're like, well, what am I typing here? Oh yeah. From a technical perspective, that was is an odd one to pick as my first, because I thought certain parts of it were going to be easy, but then reverse engineering the word bank format, modifying the font sheet, all of that, there was more than one night I was up till 4 a.m. working on that one. But when I finally figured it all out, I was like one of those, I actually literally got out of my seat and jumped in the air. I was so happy. And that's why I do it, that feeling.
Well, I bought a Dreamcast keyboard to play that, and text assist, I think you pronounce it. But yeah, just to say, like, you know, that game, as much as it's one that perhaps flew under some people's radar, you know, presumably maybe they're not fans of Evangelion, which they should be, because I've watched it recently. It's fantastic. Yes, yeah. But it's just amazing to see a game like that, you know, be translated. And just to sort of a nod to Mike's A to Z of Dreamcast games, you know, I was reading that specific entry about that game, and it's went from, you know, this game's quite difficult to play because, you know, you need to know Japanese, to you now can play it, go get Derek's translation, essentially. So it's just really cool to see that bit of Dreamcast history unlocked to us, you know, who can't speak the language.
It's very easy in the Dreamcast community and Dreamcast scene to focus heavily on new indie games, or focusing on games that were lost and have been found, or sort of games that were cancelled and early stages. But actually having games that are already on the Dreamcast that people overlook quite heavily because of the fact they can't understand the language, I think that's as important for us in the West to experience, because, you know, the same goes for Saturn as well, I suppose. The 2 libraries, we only really have a very small fraction of the library that we actually look at a lot. You know, how many times have we mentioned Spirit of Speed? Probably a lot more times than we mentioned Sakura Wars. So the fact that we've mentioned a game which is legitimately one of the best games on Dreamcast, a lot less than a game which is terrible, I think says that we are very Western centric. So all these translations just bring another set of games to our attention and the scene's attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Spirit of Speed gets far too much airtime.
Yeah,
really does. I mean, nobody's talking about Jimmy White's Cue Ball 2. Like, you know,
just because Jimmy White's a very average game, and it's nothing that bad about it. Spirit of Speed is just terrible. Although Jimmy White does have one of the most haunting covers of all time. But yeah, it's so important, I think, to remember that it is much more than just, you know, a few games we talk about all the time, because, you know, if we just talked about the same things over and over again, which I'm sure some people think we probably do, because they probably don't know Dreamcast has just a large scope. So for this year to have all these games suddenly be translated, on top of the games that we've had for some time translated, I think it's just been spectacular. And I think me and Lewis have spoken a lot in the last year about the fact of, you know, all these games coming through and a real buzz about Dreamcast.
Cool. That is very cool. I mean, in terms of, so for people listening, most people who are listening will probably be very tech savvy when it comes to Dreamcast and will know GDMU and being able to burn things to CD. But just to give people an idea, guys, in terms of the games that you've translated, is it as easy as just being able to download it from a website, pop it onto an SD card? Can you burn it to a CD if that's what you use? How can people play these?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I know that in the Saturn translation scene, there is a lot of consideration given to copyright infringement, which I'll be honest with you, at this point, how old are these games? You know, how long am I going to be cognizant of potentially, infringing on copyright? So I say that because for all of my releases, I supply an already patched CDI for those who don't have an ODE. and an already patched GDI, but I also supply a patch file. So if you insist on downloading the original unmodified source and patching it yourself, you can do that. But if you head over to the Dreamcast Talk forum, so dreamcast-talk.com, and go into the forums and the modifications translation section, you will find links to all of those. And I believe you also posted those links on all of the blog posts you did to cover those releases. And I'll also mention, talking about patches, during this process, and I say this so that anybody else out there doing Dreamcast hacks or translations can be aware, throughout this process, I realized, there really is no good patch format of any kind for Dreamcast games, and that's largely due to the fact that the disk image formats are all over the place. But with the modern GDI format, I actually wrote a new patcher with a patch format. It's called Universal Dreamcast Patcher. I know, very creative name. But essentially it works with redump style rips and also the TOSEC style GDI rips. And you can create your own patch files. It's all a GUI, just click, click, click. I encourage anybody who's going to work on translation or otherwise any form of hacks for Dreamcast, use my patcher. It'll make it very easy to ship your patches, and it's very agnostic when it comes to what it accepts as the source disk image for input. So it's very universal.
Amazing. I think I'm going to have to try out the typing. I love Evangelion, and I want a reason to crack out my Dreamcast keyboard again. So that's a no-brainer, right? And you've played it, Lewis, and you've enjoyed what you've played so far?
Yeah, I watched Evangelion after playing it, so I feel like going back to it. So I need to reverse that and now play it again.
All right, moving on then. I think the next thing to talk about is kind of what's next. And Lewis, I know that you've got a link here for me to look at, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this guy's name. Is it Rolly or Rolly?
Yeah, Rolly.
Dreamcast Talk forums. And there's a list here of, so these are ones in development, right? In terms of translations that are on the go.
Just to jump in, actually, Andrew, just in regards to the sort of like the community of translators, obviously I'm someone who is from the outside. I am in the, it's 8 Mansions, isn't it? The 8 Mansions Discord, but I just kind of lurk there. I don't have anything I can contribute, but it's nice to see everyone sort of talking about their different translations and whatnot. But one thing I've noticed, this thing I noticed started when I wrote a piece for the blog called, I think it was 5 Dreamcast translations you may have missed, because it's a bit baffling that certain people, especially after I wrote that article, were like, what, there's a Blue Submarine number 6 translation? Oh my god, I've always wanted to play that. So it's good to just remind people that these games can be playable if you're not a Japanese speaker. But it is interesting to see that a lot of these names that pop up, such as Aria, you got Mr. Nobody, I always get this name wrong, Cargodin, yeah.
Espernite is very big.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome guy. He's helped me a lot.
Yeah, Espernite. Speaking of those two, there is another Found in Translation episode about the Napple Tale translation, excellent translation as well. But yeah, it's like I've noticed there's sort of like a crossover of these names, and I presume that'll be even more so in the future. There's this project that included these names and that project, and then you're going to see, presumably, like in the case of your translation, Derek and Burntends, is there's some of those names actually popped up in the patch notes for Hanagumi Taisen Columns too. So it's really awesome to see kind of like this crossover all round with these different talents.
Yeah, definitely. There's not a ton of people doing this type of work, right? So those who are, it's a bit close-knit, and guys like Raleigh, maybe it is Rolly, I don't know. I've always said Raleigh in my head. This is the first time I've ever said it out loud, right? Like many things on the internet. But Raleigh and Espernite and Aria, specifically those 3, when I was first starting with Evangelion and moving along and learning more, every time I had questions, they were always so immensely helpful. And honestly, it's invaluable, right? Because there is so much let's say, tribal knowledge when it comes to this type of work, and to be able to transmit that to others and not be like what's what they call like a gatekeeper, right? To not be snooty about it. To me, that's awesome, and that really just goes to speak to what a wonderful community we have here.
So this is on the Dreamcast Talk forum, and it's Dreamcast Games Translation. It's a mega thread, so you know it's going to be good. And from what I can tell, it's you might have to correct me here, Lewis, but it's a list of games that have either already been translated or are in the process of being translated. Is that right?
Yeah. So you've got the ones in green. So we'll put this in the link in the podcast description. The ones in green are obviously playable, and then you've got sort of the ones in yellow or red. Which I don't know what the ones in red mean, but the ones in yellow are in progress. So just some sort of cool ones to note here. We've got, and bear in mind, these are ones that, are in different stages of being translated. I don't want to obviously, announce it like it's a definite, and then whoever's developing it feels kind of under pressure. I would never want that. But, we've got some quite notable titles here. Like one of the ones I know you're pretty chuffed about is Eldorado Gate, Andrew.
Yes.
That's Espinite and Kargadin. That's in progress. It does say here hacking help wanted. So if you hear this and you want to go help,
please help.
Do that.
We need Eldorado Gate.
Yeah. And then you've obviously got, I don't know how to pronounce this, but I don't know if Mike wants to chip in because I've never actually seen or played this game, but Advanced Daisen
Ryaku?
That one, yep. You did it better than me.
We're saying that. We could be saying completely wrong, couldn't we?
Yeah.
The translation for 2001 came out a few years ago. So yeah, I've played quite a lot of that actually.
Okay. It says here it's unfinished, so presumably more of that is to come
That's
eventually.
I can't remember. I think there's quite a few of the stats. Some of the stats columns don't have the English translations on.
Okay.
But yeah, it's the same translator. It's pretty decent. It's playable, put it that way.
Then another one as well, Rent a Hero, number one. That's obviously one that a lot of people have really wanted to see translated.
Rent a Hero is very close to completion. The guy Vincent NL, who's the main hacker on that one, he actually helped me a couple times too. The amount of technical effort that went into that, there's actually a thread on Dreamcast Talk following the whole thing. I mean, if you want to see some cool stuff, check that out. But they're on the final stretch, so that is imminent for sure.
There you go. There's some insider information from Derek. Then we also got Run. Is that Run equals Dim as Black Soul? I know this one. This is Rolly. They were basically tweeting about this. So I think it was sort of towards the end of last year that this was like the new project, and previous efforts by them include Blue Submarine number 6. Great team who work on these and have already produced some excellent translations. Another one here, we got Sengoku Turb, which if you ever have seen a game cover and you thought, what the hell is that? Then that is probably Sengoku Turb. Yeah. As a very odd game cover. The sequel more so. I've not played it. I know you have though, Mike.
Yes.
Any words on this one?
Yeah, it's a bit weird. Yeah, Sengoku Turb, but the first one is sort of like it's just imagine playing I can't even explain that. It's just basically been on a really, really bad trip. And the number 2 is the same, but then throws in loads and loads of really cool mini games.
Another one that actually I'm kind of glad is on this list is Tricolor Crisis. Yeah. Just another turn-based RPG that we never saw, and there's not as many turn-based RPGs as I think we'd like to sort of on the Dreamcast in English. Unfortunately, there's the big ones, Grandia, Skies of Arcadia. You've got Evolution, but it's nice to see some the potential for a translation of these ones we never saw come into English, so that's really exciting too. It's
a huge list, and it's worth pointing out, I've already seen a name that I know, which is PC Wizard 13, and of course we've mentioned many a time on the podcast and still hasn't been on it, which we'll have to fix someday. But that's Rune Jade that he's translating. What's Rune Jade? I've not heard that one.
It's an online one, isn't it, Rune Jade? So I think that.
Yeah, no. When it was relevant, yeah, it definitely was. I think it was. I venture to say it may have even been an early MMORPG.
Yeah, it says here Rune Jade is internet-enabled multiplayer RPG from the creators of Elemental Gimmick Gear. There you go. I believe PC Wizard obviously wanted to sort of tinker around with this because I think he wanted to sort of make it at least playable because, he's big involved with Dreamcast Live and all these online servers for playing Dreamcast games online. So I think his intention was to kind of make it playable, so they could actually play it online. So that's exciting.
Very interesting, and it would be cool to be able to play stuff like that on. This is we've spoken about it before, but it's a whole other podcast about online games and being able to get all these, being able to translate these games from Japanese and then play them online as well. That's a whole new world of gaming that we've got. But also, just to note on this list, I thought it was interesting to note is that there's a lot of games being translated from Japanese and English into Spanish.
Yes.
Which is excellent.
And Polish as well.
Polish, Russian I've seen as well.
Yeah,
but
Russian, yeah.
Huge amount. Spanish is it's like the second or third biggest language in the world. So great. It's great that we're getting all of that as well. It's fantastic to see that it's not just English that we're seeing things translated into. So, very, very cool. All right, so moving on from that, we've looked at a bunch of stuff that's in progress or that already exists. Derek and Burntends, what are you looking at next? What games are coming up that you can tell us about, and maybe what are your dream games to work on, do you think?
Well, right now, as sort of a simpler title to do, we just started work on Rainbow Cotton, nice. Which is not very technically challenging. To be honest, the majority of it is just modifying some images and also transcribing spoken Japanese dialogue from all of the cutscenes, the FMVs, and then translating them and then subbing and re-encoding them to the Dreamcast video format. So that's being worked on now. I definitely do not have the free time I did towards the earlier part of the year. The type of time I was able to dedicate to Sakura Wars Columns 2. But I could say that my wish list, and I've already looked into this game, and so have many others, and I guess what I'm about to say is no surprise to anyone here, but Sega Gaga. It is such a love letter to Sega fans. It would be so awesome to be able to play that in English. The major challenge there is the font, where it actually uses the BIOS font, so the built-in font sheet. That's kind of, you can think of it as baked right into the Dreamcast hardware itself. And as a result, it's kind of that double wide Japanese character set where you cannot fit into that, amount of screen real estate, any sort of meaningful English text that would serve as a translation. So Megavolt85, who we all know from the awesome Thomas Wave conversions, he's taken a crack at hacking it. He's done some early proof of concept work. The original team that kind of got everybody excited about Sega Gaga some years ago, they had a hacker working with them who was able to kind of do something similar. But it seems, from what I understand at this stage, it's almost possible, but it's not quite there. And if it were, and if my talents were requested by any group that was dedicated to getting it done, I would be there in a heartbeat, honestly.
Burntends, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm going to be helping out with Rainbow Cotton as well. I'm also working on Bulk Slash for Sega Saturn, but helping out gathering voice actors. And we've been gathering voice actors, and we've been recording a bunch of sessions. We're I'd say about 60% of the way done, and we're hoping to have it done by the end of the summer. As for dream games, so I guess I probably mentioned it. I mention this all the time, but definitely want to do Sakura Wars 2. Noah Steam, who was the original developer, he gave me a lot of his documentation on how he extracted a lot of the script, and it seems like it can be done. I just need somebody with programming skills and the time to actually do that part. That's funny. I even mentioned in the unreleased part 2 of Galleon's Found in Translation that if I do get involved with the translation of Sakura Wars 2, I will find a gi and recreate the Segata Senshiro commercial that has him and Sakura advertising the game.
That'd be awesome.
Nice.
I would love to see that personally.
Yeah. So it needs to happen, basically. So anybody who can help make that happen, get in touch with them.
Yeah, I have I can easily find like half a dozen translators, but unfortunately, programmers are a little hard to come by.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, if anybody is listening to this, get in touch. We'll have Twitter handles and stuff like that where to find everybody towards the end. So if you are listening and want to get involved in any of these translations or any future projects, I'm sure that people would. So it sounds like you'd like to hear from them if they have the skills. So
definitely, Sakura Wars 2, just the whole series is very in demand. Specifically 3, I've not obviously had the chance to play it, but 3 seems to be like a very popular one amongst that series. So I'd love to just be able to play all of them one day in English. That'd be incredible. Yeah. So let's hope that can happen.
Yeah, 2 and 3 are commonly in contention for the best in the series, and I want to do both.
Fingers crossed that you can. That would be excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, Lewis, I know you're not a translator, but if you could have any Dreamcast game translated, what would it be?
Yeah, I think I've said this before, but I really want to see Comic Party translated, just if only just so I can be the only human. So the only person, the only person in England to laugh at the jokes, to do with all like that sort of era of manga, which modern manga and anime fans, who probably weren't even born, don't even get. So so that'd be a big one for me. Desperia as well is one I'd really like to see translated. If I recall, I think Aria said in our Discord that there's something to do with the way the text is in that game that makes it kind of awkward to translate or hack, I suppose. But that is still one I'd love to see eventually. And we have a lot of talented people, so go for it.
Mike, what about you? What would you like to see?
I'm gonna have to go for the boring answer and say Siga Gaga.
Boring, but
it's the popular opinion. The popular opinion, isn't it? I mean, we're all waiting for it, so it's definitely the one that we all want to see, because it's it's that totem of a game. I think it will be fantastic when it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that, and also we've already mentioned it, but Eldorado Gate, which is great to know that it is in translation. I've been wanting to play that for some time. I don't know, there's just something about that game that draws me in, as I've mentioned before on the podcast. So I'm looking forward to being able to play in English one day. Whether or not the next 6 games in the series will then get translated is another matter, I suppose. But at least I can play the first one. That'd be lovely.
It's such a common story, though, isn't it? Like a tale as old as time of, I saw this game in a gaming magazine back in the day, and they never released it over here. One that just springs to mind is it Trials of Mana, which they've just actually released on Switch. Something like that. People like, oh my God, Secret of Mana. There's a sequel coming out. Never did. And then we're in a time now where these things just pop up and we can play them. So it's amazing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's wrap things up, and as I mentioned a bit earlier, we'll go through where we can find people. Derek, I'll start with you. Let us know. I mean, if you're on Twitter, let us know where you can find you on Twitter and any of the Discords or anything that you use as well. Just let us know where to find you, basically.
Sure. So on my full name, Derek Pascarella. I mean, I don't know how helpful that is if you can't spell it, but I would say check the Dreamcast Junkyard blog posts where they've got links there. And then on Discord, you'll see me with the username Derek and in parentheses A-Team, which is of course my I'm 10 years old and this is my cool online hacker name alias. But it's never left me. So those are the main places there. And then of course the Sega Extreme and the Dreamcast Talk forums. You'll see me under a similar name there as well.
Burntends, what about yourself?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Burntends2. And you can always find me around on things like the Sega Shiro Discord and occasionally Sega Extreme.
I've got to commend Burntends on his excellent Twitter avatar of Polytoad dabbing. I love that avatar.
Before we move into the Dreamcast Junkyard stuff, Mike, where can we find you on Twitter?
You can find me at space_turnip. You can also find me at Dreamcast Pics, where I post lots of pictures of vaguely interesting Dreamcast-related items.
Indeed. And Lewis, what about yourself?
Yeah, you can find me at LewisJFC on Twitter, where I talk about games and occasionally rant and then delete my rants about 2 seconds later because I don't like to be seen as a grumbly person. But, you know, that's my problem.
I like your rants. There's nothing wrong with a rant every now and again. It's fine. It's all good. You can find me at Oddment84 on Twitter. And for the Dreamcast Junkyard, we are at the DC Junkyard. And it's worth pointing out that we've now surpassed 7,000 followers on Twitter, which is amazing. We can't really do applause because it will blow out the mics. But if everybody wants to click to show our appreciation for 7,000 followers on Twitter, that's amazing.
What's the opposite of putting F in the chat?
W in the chat, is that how it is?
Yeah. We didn't put a tweet out about, oh, you know, hey, thanks for helping us surpass 7,000 followers, because for ages we were at 7,000 and then it kept going down.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So like I told everyone like in our staff chat, like, hey, we were 7,000, and then like 2 days later I looked at it again, it had like gone down. Yeah, 6,999. So, but now we're at a sort of a safe number where we can announce it. Although maybe, let me look, 30 people will hear this. No, 31, sorry, will hear this and be like, right, we're unfollowing you smug gits.
I hope they don't. I hope it just continues to grow because it's a great, it's great, amazing memes and lots of interesting posts there. So yeah. Long may it continue, and you both do a great job, Mike and Lewis, of managing that. So thank you for keeping it up. And yeah, lots of memes to come, I'm sure. And of course, we've got the website as well, which is the dreamcastjunkyard.co.uk, where we put posts.
We've been a bit quiet recently, but maybe a sort of a combination of the good weather and the easing of lockdown. But yeah, we'll be putting stuff up soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And we've got lots of stuff. We've had stuff going on YouTube as well, right? So we've just had a book club that went out for, was it Virtua Tennis? Is that right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, indeed.
Which is very good.
Very good. Yeah, very entertaining.
Kev dressed up in his sporty attire, headband and all.
Well, yeah. that's his normal dress, but yeah, he came ready for the event.
Great. Do we know what the next book club game is yet, or is that secret?
We do know what the next one is. However, I have no idea whether he's told anyone yet. So I'm gonna tap my nose in a knowing way, which no one can see, and and say I would say is that fans of a classic series which made an appearance on the Dreamcast will be happy.
Mm-hmm. Looking forward to seeing what that is. Yeah, but we've got full steam ahead with a lot of stuff. Like Lewis said, we have been a little bit quiet, but you know. We're back into. We've got some more Dream Pods coming your way. We're planning another DCY crossover, of course. We've still got 2001 and 2002 to do, of course, and we've also got a couple of more episodes in mind. So we're creeping ever closer to episode 100.
Yes.
So
lots of things going on this year.
Absolutely, and of course, 8 is out of Dreamcast games as well, which I ask you for an update every time we speak about it.
Yeah.
But, where are we at the moment?
Yeah, so all updated. So all pictures now updated. All spelling mistakes corrected from the last print that Lewis also has now. It's all updated. All I'm waiting for now is the last indie games to come out. So I've already got Texas today. I'm just waiting for Intrepid Dizzy and Pixel Heart to release their several games, and then it will be gone.
Amazing. Very close then. Very, very close.
We just need to pray no indie games get announced.
Yeah, if an indie game gets announced between now and it gets released, it isn't going to mention the book. So, you know, simple as that.
There we go. If you're planning on releasing an indie game anytime soon, do it quickly so that Mike can put it in his book, please.
There's been a thing going on for a while where whenever an indie game gets released, I just message Mike like, "Oh no."
Yeah. Yeah, that's not a problem. It's not a problem. I haven't got to change the entire book claim. It's fine. It's not fine.
Obviously, we appreciate those indie games. Keep them coming forever.
Oh yeah, I'd happily spend a long time getting all the book edited if it means some great new games come out.
Yep.
Yeah. We just don't want it to get to like George R.R. Martin levels where it's 10 years time and you've still not finished it because we're just waiting on more games. But anyway, yes, and I'll mention briefly before we finish that I'm working on a project called Lock On. I won't pimp it too much, but we do have a Dreamcast related issue coming up in the future, so I'll keep you posted about that. It's going to be very exciting. All right, I will leave it at that. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Burntends and Derek, for joining us. It's a pleasure to speak to you both.
Thank you for having us. It was an honor to be here. I've been listening to this show since you started it. And if you would have told me one day I'd be on it, I would slap you and call you a liar. But here I am.
Yes, thank you for having us. I'll see you in 10 years when I finally do the third game.
Yes. Well, as soon as you've got some more translation news, obviously let us know. We'll post all about it because we're all excited about it, and I'm sure we'll have you back on in the future. The next time you've got a game out, that would be awesome to speak to you again. But thank you so much, Lewis, Mike. A pleasure as always, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Please stop this disc now.
I was only joking, but I mean, if you want to do it, it's up to you.
I'll do it.
All right, we each say one in turn. So I'll start. Auf Wiedersehen.
What's the order?
That's a good point.
Yeah, we've messed this up.
All right. Yeah. Me, Mike, Derek, Lewis, Burntends. You ready?
Yes.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Kapla.
Arrivederci. Oh, we screwed it up. Also